Let's look over the instructions for Lab 9 in CSC 120. There are actually two parts to this lab, and we are working with arrays of objects, but unlike Lab 8, the objects are not visual things. They are simply collections of data. So first, Lab 9A, we're going to experiment with an array of student objects. And so when you create your Lab 9A project in NetBeans, you're going to start with these two files. If you right click on each of these links and save them in the source folder of your Lab 9A project, okay, this program actually will run. It's a starter program, and then you're going to be adding to it. So here is my Lab 9 demo program. I have MU panel and student. And let's take a look at the student class first of all. So here is the student class, and notice we have 5 properties, 2 strings, an integer, a boolean, and a double. Okay. And so with 5 properties, the constructor method for the student class has accepts 5 parameters. And we will store the string parameters and the boolean parameter in the property, and then we're going to call the setter method for class code and GPA from the constructor. That's a method that's down later in the class, and you'll see set class code. We're trying to make sure that the class code is not an illegal value. So the only legal class codes are 1 through 4. 1 is a first year or a freshman, 2 is a sophomore, 3 is a junior, 4 is a senior. So we don't want a value less than 1 or greater than 4 to be entered. Similarly, for set GPA, the only legal GPAs are in the range from 0 to 4. So we don't want a value less than 0 or greater than 4 to be entered. Okay, so that's why we call the setter. It's just short. It's a shortcut way. We don't have to put the if statement in the constructor then. Okay, and then we have getters, standard getters for each of the data types, and setters here, and then a toString method. And the toString method will say whether the person is a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior, and whether it's person is an athlete or not. Okay, so you'll see how that will work. Okay. So that's the student class, standard stuff, okay? And then in MU panel, we're going to work with an array of objects. So notice we declare an array of student objects called student roster, and we have a JText area that we're going to be putting the output in. Okay, so we declare the student roster. Then we have a method called fill array, and then another method called display entire array. So what would we do to fill the array? We instantiate the array of students, so there's 15 students to start with, and then we instantiate each of those positions from 0 to 14 with a specific student data. So the student roster 0 is Samantha Student, student roster 1 is Maria Livers, student roster 2 is Joseph Schmo, and you see the dorm, and the number here is that whether they're senior, junior, freshman, or sophomore. False or true is whether they are an intercollegiate athlete, and the GPA is the last thing. Okay, so that fills the array. And then display entire array. Once we have the array set up, the display entire array is going to use a loop. And not only that, we're going to calculate the total GPA and the average GPA for all of the students. So we print a little heading here in the answer area, set count to 0 and total GPA to 0, and then we have a loop for every element in the array from 0 up to, but not including the length of the array, going up by 1. We are going to append the result of the toString for element k in the array. We're going to add 1 to count, and we're going to add the GPA that we get from element k of the array to my running total. Okay, and we do that for every element in the array. Then after we've done that, the average is the total divided by count, and we print out the rest of the information. So if I run this program as it's given, Okay, it should start up any day now. Okay, so here's the listing of all students, and this is the listing that comes from the what am I trying to say? It comes from the toString method. Okay, so Fritz Puma lives in Miller Hall. He's a senior, non-athlete, 2.97 GPA. Patrick Starr lives in Miller Hall, freshman, athlete with a 3.89. So then at the end here, since there are 15 students listed, and figures out what the average GPA is. Okay, so that code is given to you. Now, what your task will be is to, let's see here. So you run the program and see the results. Okay, so now you're going to create other methods which will display some, but not all of, the objects in the array. So you're going to make a copy of the display entire array method, paste it in immediately after that method, and change the name to display sophomores. Okay, so let me get rid of this little window here. So I'm going to go here and copy. I'm using the keyboard, but you could use the mouse to highlight things. I'm going to copy this entire method, including the end, the curly brace at the end. We'll copy that, and then here we are going to paste in the duplicate copy. Now it's not going to like the duplicate copy. It's going to say, hey, it's the name was already used. But I'm going to change this name of my duplicate copy to display sophomores. Okay. I don't know why it's so slow. Sophomore students, and I'll change the comment down here because it's no longer entire array, it's display sophomores. Okay, so that's just kind of like house cleaning. Here's the important thing. Okay, how can we change this? Right now in the copied code, every time I go through the loop, I append the toString for that student to the answer area, and I add it to the total. I don't want to do that for every student. I only want to do that if the element in position K is a sophomore. Okay, so how can I do that? So you want to change the body of the display sophomores method so that it only processes students in the array that are sophomores. And students who are sophomores, their class code value is 2. So the way to do this is to place an if statement immediately inside the for loop and test to see if the result of the get class code method called for element K of the array is equal to 2. Only if this test evaluates as true should we display the item in the answer area and add to the total. Okay, so you want to go in here and say if, okay, something equals 2. Okay, and then don't forget to put a closing curly for that if statement. This is an error because, well, what is equal to 2? Okay, well, we want to call the get class code method for the element in position K of the student roster array. So we're going to take this thing here. Now you can't just do this because student roster K is not an integer. That's a student object. So what we need to do is we need to call a method, a getter method. Okay, so we need to get the class code for the element in position K of the student roster, and only if that is equal to 2 should we do this. Okay, now just because I added that method, display sophomores, doesn't mean it's going to be executed. If I run the program now, it won't do it. It won't show it because I have the method, but I didn't call it. I didn't call it from the constructor of my MU panel. Okay, so all I get is just a listing of all students. Okay, what you need to do then is, don't forget to follow this instruction. Add a line in the MU panel constructor that calls or invokes this method. It should be invoked after display entire array. Okay, so if I go up here into the constructor method of MU panel, when I say display entire array, then I would say display sophomores. Okay, and now I'm calling this method that I just wrote, and so don't know why it takes so long to run. It has something to do with the video recording software on this computer. There it is. So it will say the listing of all students and then just a listing of sophomore students. And notice that only the ones that are sophomores are shown. There's only 5 students listed in with a different average GPA. Because if you look at the original listing, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sophomores. Okay. Now, you're going to do 3 more methods. You're going to copy the display sophomores and paste it in and change it to make one that displays athletes. You know if there's an athlete because the get is athlete, I think is that what it's called? Where's the student class? There's a getter here. Yeah, get is athlete will return either true or false based on whether that particular object is an intercollegiate athlete. Okay. Another method would display all the students who are on the dean's list with a GPA of greater than or equal to 3.5. So there's a get GPA, which you can use to do that test. And then the third method that you're going to write, it's actually the fourth one, but you're going to display a list of all students who live in McMaster Hall. And this is the video that was preparatory for Lab 9. To test a string for equality, you have to use dot equals McMaster Hall. Don't use the double equals operator. Okay? All right. So you can say get dorm. That'll return the string, which is the name of the dorm, and then you can test that for equality with dot equals. Okay. For part B of the lab, okay, you're going to work with an array of book objects, but this is a little different. You are going to have to write the book class. So the program, the given program, assumes that there is a book class that is constructed as is described in these instructions. And if you download the book, or excuse me, the MU panel here for Lab 9B, you'll see that, okay, it won't run because there is no book class. You have to write the book class. But if there was a book class, here's an array of books called library book. And okay, it declares an array of 7 books, and it instantiates all 7 books. Okay, and would display. So you have to write this. You just have to write this book class yourself. So follow the instructions for Lab 9B. Write a book class, and here's the data that you would use. And so what you're going to do is you're going to have an output that looks like this, with the toString for the books in the library, and the number of books with more than 500 pages is that. And then the final version of the lab, the final version of the lab should look like this. Okay. All right, so good luck with Lab 9. I did it again. Good luck with Lab 9, and if you you have any questions, as always, make sure you contact your instructor. Okay, see you later.